We're an organisation that flies somewhat under the radar here in Geelong, but we provide an important service here in the city. Our history in Geelong goes back to the 1890s, but more about the history later. Fundamentally, we are a Christian organisation under the umbrella of the Anglican Church. We look after the welfare of visiting seafarers. We look after their spiritual and physical needs, without discrimination on grounds of colour, race, nationality, ethnicity, religion or sexuality. We provide counselling and assistance with justice matters to visiting seafarers. To do this here in Geelong, we employ a full-time chaplain, Noah Park over here, the Reverend Noah Park. Noah was born in Korea. He was a ship's engineer, which makes him an ideal person to communicate with the many Asian seafarers that we have in our port. We are supported by about 30 volunteers, with our centre being open from 10 AM to 10 PM, 365 days of the year. To carry out our ministry, when a ship comes into the port, Noah or a volunteer will visit the ship and invite the crew to our centre. When the seafarers finish their shift, they would telephone us and we would drive to the gangway and bring them to the centre. At Geelong, and not so long back, we obtained a liquor licence, but only for visiting seafarers. The seafarers would be familiar with the Mission to Seafarers centres, as there are MTS centres in pretty well all the major ports throughout the world. A seafarer would be confident that they would not be ripped off at one of our centres. At our centre, they can contact home by telephone or the internet. We can arrange seafarers to transfer money to their families back home. And now in this wonderful era of Skype cameras, we now see men communicating with their wives, babies being held up to the cameras, possibly for the first time, and sometimes it will be the first time they've seen the baby. We have some wonderful stories of these sightings, and of course seafarers getting very excited, needless to say. At the centre, we have recreational facilities where seafarers can play table tennis, play pool, have a beer, watch TV in a relaxed and friendly atmosphere. We have a chapel that some crew members make use of. The chaplain will often take communion services on board the ship. He has now set up a website called Sea Church and communicates electronically with possibly 27,000 seafarers in 1,100 ships. There are over 1.5 million seafarers worldwide in more than 55,000 ships. So Noah claims to have the biggest congregation in the world. If I can now talk about the lives that some of these seafarers lead, keeping in mind that more than 90% of our daily needs here in Australia come via seafarers. While standards in the shipping industry are continually improving, seafarers will spend long stretches of time away from their families, lose lives in shipping accidents, suffer abuse, underpayment or non-payment of wages. Piracy is still a major problem, as is loneliness and depression caused by many months of isolation and hardships. The site of the port is usually in isolated industrial areas. The seafarers mostly come from poorer third world countries. They are continually on the move, often only in port for one day or less. Seafarers are somewhat out of sight, out of mind. One of the few organisations that they can turn to that will look after their welfare is the Mission to Seafarers. It is not unusual for seafarers to end up in the Geelong hospital. Needless to say, the ship will not wait, and the crewmen will be left stranded here in the Geelong hospital. It is our organisation that will look after their welfare. And if I can now touch on some of the history of the Mission to Seafarers, it all began in the mid-1800s in the UK. An Anglican priest on a seaside holiday started visiting ships that were anchored in the harbour. He was appalled by what he saw. The living and working conditions of the seafarers was terrible. Their isolation was another major problem. He spent the next 15 years looking after seafarers, and the Mission to Seafarers grew out of that small one-man operation. There are now 230 centres worldwide. As for our history here in Geelong, now I know Alan touched on some of this, but I'll just briefly go over it and just take a few bits out about the architects and things, but anyway. In 1890, we operated from a building in Corio Street not that far from here. In 1899, when we were called the Harbour Lights Organisation, we moved to a building in Mirabel Street, which was the home of the Savage restaurant for many years. We were called the British and International Sailors Society. That was until 1962, when we became part of the worldwide mission to seamen. 100 years ago today, our organisation moved to the King Edward VII Sailors Rest Building, where you are right now. A noted feature of this building is the electric light Sailors Rest sign at the top of the building facing the harbour. It was installed in 1926 and is reportedly to be the oldest electric light sign in Victoria. Our organisation was at this site till about 25 years ago, when the Geelong Regional Commission arranged for us to vacate this building and we moved out to the North Shore area. This arrangement suited us very nicely, for the Port of Geelong has moved from Cunningham Pier to the North Shore area. We are now right in the centre of the port, which suits us perfectly. And if I can now finish up with some of the statistics of the Geelong operation, and I'll bring to your attention some of our historic photos which are on display here. In 2011, we had nearly 8,000 visitors at our centre. About 500 ships visited the port. Their nationalities were Filipino, a bit over 3,000, China, a bit over 1,100, India, about 1,000, Burmese, 350 odd, Korean, 300, Russian, 280, Ukraine, nearly 200, Turkey, a bit less, Indonesian, and then on it goes smaller and smaller numbers. We see ourselves as an organisation providing a worthwhile service to the seafarers and provide a practical example of Christian outreach. And if I can just finish up by saying, Val, who is still our secretary, Val over here, our secretary, Val just whispered in my ear how it was 64 years ago, Val used to deliver mail here to the Mission to Seafarers Centre. So well done, Val. You've done a lot
of the mission. It's fascinating when you think back on what's happened over a 100-year period.